So the way CSS works is you start with what's called a selector, where we're going to select a certain type of tag, and then anything within that tag is going to follow this rule. So the color actually affects text. So if I just change this to say color, red, and knows certain primary colors by name, we can hit save on this. Now I go back and I hit refresh. And there we go. Oh, it's kind of a weird little slash. Where'd that slash come from? What? Oh, up here. Excellent. We typed a slash there. Save it. And sure enough, it changed these to red. Okay, we can also use the hex color, which is more common. So I will put a £sign or hashtag and then a hex color. So red would be, whoops, type things for me. FF0000. In fact, maybe let's try 0000FF. I think that might be yellow. Let's save that. That's blue. Okay, so that changes it there. And what's happening though, notice, is it's changing all of the text. So I'm telling it to change everything that's within the body, and that's changing both the H1 and the paragraph. It's not doing anything to the image because basically this color doesn't affect the image. All right, so now I want to change these individually, just the H1 or the paragraph. So let's say I want the header to be this blue color, but the paragraph not. So instead of saying the entire body, I'm going to say just the H1. So you can grab actual like tag names, and then every single tag name will be colored like that. So let's say I hit save, go back, hit refresh. And now it is only coloring the H1 and not coloring the P tag. If I wanted them two separate colors, I could maybe go down here and add another selector. I could say for every paragraph text, put these little curly brackets. And now on the paragraph text, maybe I'll say the color is, we'll change this one to £00FF. 00, see what color that is. Save it, go back, hit refresh, and that gives us this limey green color. All right, so you can see that I specifically grabbed through selectors the H1 or the paragraph. All right, now where it gets a little more complicated is when we want to do things individually. Now, CSS is set up that by default, it allows us to kind of make groupings of rules so that like every single H1 will have this rule. Every single paragraph will have this rule. So let me add another paragraph. Go under here. Oops, don't want that capital. Never want capitals in your tags. I will say, isn't the monkey great? Yes. End our paragraph. Oops. Okay, so as of right now, I'm going to hit save. And because this paragraph CSS tag is changing, it's going to change the color for both of them because it's doing it for any paragraph tag according to this selector. Save that, refresh, and yes, we have both of them are green. Now, what if we wanted to change just one paragraph tag? That's the issue, is by default, we can use actual tags, which allows us to take anything in the entire document that is of that tag and change its property. So we can even, it's not just color, I could also say text. Now notice as I type text, it's automatically giving me like a whole list of things that are CSS styles. It knows I'm in a I'm typing CSS within this HTML document, and it basically is giving me all these options. And reading it, I'm remembering that it's not text that I want to do, it's font. So there it is, the very first one. Font size is a rule. So I can say the font size, maybe I'll go like 24 pixels there. Hit save. There we go. And now I made these bigger. So we can change size, we can change color, we can even change, let's see, text align, center. We can even change some layout stuff. I save this. Now all of a sudden this is centered to the screen and it knows that, which is pretty awesome. All right, I'm gonna take this center back off. So the next step in doing CSS is, okay, this is great. You know, whatever tags we have, we can control things, and we can control groups of things, which is really powerful. Say we had, 500 paragraphs on the site, and we wanted to change the font size and even the font type of every single paragraph in the whole site. We could create one CSS rule and change everything. It's very, very powerful. So the idea is you want to group as many things as you can within a specific rule so that you have the most power to change more things at once. Now, beyond that, beyond having power to group many things at once, you also want the power to call out something individually or to create your own groups. Let me show you how that works. So right now we are using the P tag to color both sets of paragraph text to green. Oops, save that. Refresh, it's back over here on the left, color and size it. Now let's say we want to control these individually, okay? What we can do is inside of the first tag, inside of the first P tag, and by inside of it, I mean like after the actual tag name, but before the tag closes, hit a space, and to grab one individually, we can define what's called an ID. And to do that, we just put ID equals, and then this has to actually be in quotes. And you'll notice that in most of these editors, in Atom and Sublime Text, if you type one quote, it'll automatically type the second one and put the cursor in the middle of them for you. So you can just type a quote and then start typing and it's in there. It's pretty nice. So an ID, this is kind of a user-defined name that we get to decide what this is called. And then we can talk to it and tell it what rules we want specifically in our CSS. So let's call this one, look at this amazingly cute baby monkey. Let's call this, we can just call it amazing. Okay, so now we have this paragraph that has an ID of amazing, okay? And before we've done anything with it, if I save this, I go refresh, absolutely nothing changes, doesn't do anything different to it. But what I can do is up here, instead of calling an entire paragraph, I can call the ID amazing. Now I can't just type the word amazing. It's not going to know what that is. If I save it, refresh it, I lost my rules here. It's not doing anything to these. In order to select, and these are called selectors, so we're selecting a tag or a group of tags. Okay, so when you're talking about selecting an entire tag or a group of tags or whatever, as long as it's a default HTML tag, you can go ahead and use the exact tag name. And again, if you just Google like HTML tags, okay, it's probably going to take you to the 3schools.org. This is this W3 schools, and this will give you everything you ever wanted to know. In fact, here's every HTML tag there is. It's really not a ton of them. And you can also dive into CSS, learn everything about that. So it's a really, really good resource, W3 schools, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. You can get into server-side stuff, crazy stuff from here. But if ever you're trying to look up, what else can I put in here? What types of tags, things like that. How do we actually select an ID? To select an ID, instead of just typing the word, we just have to put a hashtag in front of it. All right, so our hashtag amazing is going to be looking for an ID, a specific ID called amazing. So now in this case, my color and my font size should only change on this first paragraph tag and not on the second one, because it's the only one that matches this amazing ID. We'll hit save, and hit refresh, and sure enough, it worked. All right, so we're still styling the H1 tag from the H1, and now we're styling just specifically this paragraph tag by calling out its ID. All right, easy enough, right? So we can create our own CSS rules by either, using the whole tag or using an ID to get a specific one. Now there's one more rule for selectors, and that is if we want to make our own group of tags. All right, so an ID is always just one tag. All right, like you should never have the same ID in two different tags. I think this will actually work. I think this will change them both. I'm going to change it. I'm going to check it. Yeah, it does, but this is very poor form. You always want to only have one ID per tag in an entire document, because that's just kind of what an ID is. It's supposed to reference a single individual unique piece. Now, to group things together, we use what's called a class, all right? And a class, so let's say we can have an ID and a class in the same one. So let's say I'm going to add class equals monkey. Okay, so now I have this class equals monkey and an ID, so I could control this specific one either by the class or the ID or the actual paragraph frame. So to select a class, instead of saying hashtag class name, we use a dot. And we say dot class name. So the class is monkey. All right. So now, actually, I'm going to back that up a little bit. I'm going to leave that amazing one, but I'm going to change the H1. Instead of being to H1, I'm going to change it to class dot monkey. So now everything with the dot monkey class is going to follow this color, which right now is the same as the amazing one, which this should be kind of interesting to see what happens to this, because it has both the class and the ID. And we're telling the class to be one color, red, and then we're telling the ID to be another one. My guess is, I think it's going to overwrite this with this when we actually do it. I'll try it, save, go back, and yeah, it did, interestingly enough. But what I really want to do is I want to add the class. Here, I'm going to take this class off of this one. I'm going to put it in the second paragraph. Okay, and I'm also going to add it to my H1. So it doesn't matter what type of HTML tag you have. I could even add classes and IDs to the body tag if I wanted. Usually don't do that because there's always only one body tag, and if you want to select that, you can just use body. But now we have two different elements, an H1 and a paragraph tag, that are both part of the same class. All right, so now we have this class color is blue, so the H1 should turn blue, and the second paragraph should turn blue. And then this middle amazing one should stay red in that larger size because that's being called by the ID. Save, refresh, and poof, there it is. You can see that that class affected both the H1 and the second paragraph by changing it blue. Pretty cool, right? So this can get very, very heady and complicated as far as the class names. So let me see. On any website, when you're using Chrome or Firefox, or even if you're on Safari, you just have to turn on the developer tools. You can open what's called the developer panel. And this is going to show us all the code for the entire site. So you can either right click and choose inspect, and that'll open it up, or you can just hit F12 and F12 will open it up. So when you first open this thing, it's probably going to be docked over on the side, or probably even the right side like this. That's perfectly fine, but I usually like to have it at the bottom. There's these three little buttons right here, this customize and control dev tools. You can click that, make it lock to the bottom. But what I just want to point out really quickly is when you open this, you can open this on any single web page whatsoever. And when you open it, it shows you, let me get into the HTML. There we go. It shows you all of the text. It shows you all of the HTML and all of the CSS that builds the web page. You can actually, kind of steal techniques and gang things from websites just by right-clicking, inspecting it, and it out in the open shows you all the underlying code. All right, so as you can see here, just looking at the FSU site, it's going to show you the tags, and you can see inside of the body tag, there's a bunch of div tags. I'll talk about that, but see, it says ID equals wrapper, class equals this, 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 and this, ID equals this. So all of these tags have these IDs and classes. And then like if I select the body tag, I can look over here and see that the background color and the font size are both being controlled in the body tag through CSS like this. So I could actually even start to tweak this and see what it looks like if I blow the font size way up on this website. Now it won't actually save on the real website, it shows me what it would look like. So this is building. Every single site out there is going to have some kind of HTML and CSS. You can always go see what it is. You can see all of these have some kind of, as we go into these div, all of these have tons of classes and IDs, and that's just how things work, is you label and organize everything in your HTML with these classes and IDs so that you can then control them with CSS. Now, there's, I'm showing you the very basics of this because there's a lot to it, and we'd have to spend like an entire semester just to make some very, very basic things, writing from scratch here, which is why we use WordPress. So we don't have to do that. We can skip a lot of this and get right to the heavier stuff that gives us a lot faster results, gives us a lot more functionality out of the box without having to spend forever writing it from scratch. So that's kind of part of the evolution of the web here. Is 20 years ago, this is how people made websites. Now, unless you're doing like a hardcore enterprise site for tens of thousands of dollars that you're building from scratch with a huge team of people, you're typically going to use something like WordPress or Squarespace or something, because it's just not time or cost effective to kind of build something like by hand like this, considering the amount of functionality you get out of WordPress or things like that. So let's see. I want to show you a little more about CSS. All right. So the other thing, next thing I want to show you with CSS is typically you're going to end up with like if we open up and look at the CSS file in one of these WordPress themes that we're going to get into, there's going to be hundreds of these. Now you can technically write CSS and JavaScript inside of one HTML document. In fact, we'll add some JavaScript here in a second, and I'll show you how that works. But ultimately, you typically separate these into separate files and then pull those files into this. And I'll show you how that works in a moment as well. First off, let's start with a little bit of JavaScript, and I'll show you how that works. Now, just like the style tag is a special tag that tells us that this is CSS, there's a second type of special tag that usually will either go, oh, it keeps doing that. It will either go within the head or it'll go underneath the body between the HTML. But for right now, we'll just stick it in the head. And that is called a script tag. End my script tag, okay? This whole document is HTML. Everything inside of the body are the traditional HTML tags to give us text and imagery. Everything inside of the style tag is CSS. That's how we control that. And then everything inside of a script tag is actually JavaScript. And whatever we write in here is going to run as JavaScript. Now, the way these three all work together is, again, HTML holds the actual content and the structure of the actual content. Where's the link to the image? What is the actual text? That type of thing. If you have a video or an audio piece, any of that stuff is all like, put in HTML tags. Then CSS controls how that stuff looks, what color it is, how big it is, where it is on the screen, that type of thing. It styles the actual content. Now, JavaScript controls the actual functionality of like, I want to push a button and make something happen, interactivity or any kind of logic or scripting. So the first piece of script that I'm going to show you is called an alert. So inside of our script tag, we can type alert and then open, close, parenthesis, and semicolon. And inside of this alert parentheses, we put some quotes. And inside of that quotes, I'm going to type hello world. This is what nerdy programmers have been doing forever, is typing hello world to themselves. Okay, so what's going to happen now, I'm going to save this. And now go back to my browser where my page is open. And this time I'm going to refresh it. And I got this little dialog box that says hello world and makes me say okay before my page even loads. All right, so I'm talking to myself in code and telling it to prompt the user to say hello. Easy enough. Now, one other piece of code, instead of alert, what we typically use, because alert literally like stops and forces the user to hit OK, whatever. A lot of times we just kind of want to send a message to ourselves as programmers. I'm going to show you how to do that right here with the JavaScript and within the inspect console developer window. So inside of our script, instead of alert, we can type console.log, and we will say hello inner world now instead, or perhaps inner hidden secret browser debug world. Okay, so now this is our message. You can write whatever message you want. The important thing is just to understand that we're putting JavaScript inside of this exact same document, and it all kind of goes together, 3 different programming languages, CSS in the style tag, JavaScript in the script tag. And inside, and so now once I change that from alert, which is going to just prompt the user with a box right away, when I change it to console.log, put a message in there, hit save. You always have to save your document here. I'm hitting Command S. I could be going to File Save. I'm just hitting Command S because whatever changes you make will not show up unless you save your file. So now I'm going to go back to my browser. I'm going to hit refresh, and nothing changes, but I don't get that alert anymore. But what I can do is now if I hit F12 or I right click and choose Inspect, open my inspector. Now, when you've got this inspector open, there's a bunch of different tabs across the top that can show you all kinds of nerdy things. The default one, Elements, which is what we were just looking at. This Elements tab is what shows us all the HTML tags on the left, and you can kind of open them up so you can see, you can open up the head, the style. It's showing us our entire document that we have written. Every little piece of it is over here in the HTML. And then if I select like my H1 class monkey or my P with my amazing class, you can see over here on the right, it's showing us the CSS tags that are there. So we see the HTML and the CSS inside of this element tab. The console tab is where we see JavaScript. So if I click on console, there it is. Hello, inner secret hidden browser debug world. And we're writing ourselves a message inside of the browser that the user doesn't actually see unless they were sly enough to actually open the inspector and see what the JavaScript console is telling us. So I use this every single day as I'm programming and writing things to tell myself kind of, you know, what's going on, to check variables, debug certain things. So it's important to understand how to kind of open the hood and look at the engine of what's going on in any single website, whether it's a cheesy one we're building ourselves from scratch, or if it's something more professional and complicated online. We will open up and look at this when we install WordPress, and you'll see how complicated all the code is written for us out of the box. But definitely important for you just to understand the underlying concepts before we move on to a built system like WordPress is. So here we are, we can write CSS, we can write JavaScript. Now, typically, we have so much HTML and so much CSS and so much JavaScript to actually make a functioning site or a functioning web app or whatever we want to put on the web. Typically, we separate the HTML and the CSS and the JavaScript into different files. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's take what we have here, and instead of having this big style thing, you know, stuck in the middle of our HTML page, I can actually change this to call in a different file. All right, so what we want to do is I'm going to take these things and I'm just going to cut them. Now, when we create a CSS file, we're not going to need the style tags anymore because it's just going to know. So I'm going to delete these two style tags, and the actual styles that are left, I'm going to copy them. Technically, I'm going to cut them so they're not in my document anymore. Get rid of these spaces. I'm going to make a new file. Just hit Command N for new file. Gives me a new tab here. Just going to paste in my two things here. Now, before I save it or do anything with it, it doesn't give me any nice colors, even though I know this is correct CSS. It's just giving me a plain text down here because I haven't saved it yet. So if I go to save it, my new file, here it is, our hand-coded website folder that right now only has index.html and babymonkey.jpg. I'm going to save a file inside of this called style.css. So .html is our HTML file, index, and then .css is going to be our style sheet, our cascading style sheet. I'm just going to name it style.css. And poof, as soon as we name it .css, this code editor all of a sudden knows that, sure enough, this is a CSS file, and it gives us the right things. Now, there's another step we have to do. I'm going to save this CSS file. I'm going to go ahead and save this HTML file that does not have the CSS in it anymore. And even though I created that file, and I've got this ID and these classes and all this good stuff, it's still, if I save this, it's not going to know where to look for it. I'm going to lose all our styles. All right. So what we need to do is we need to link to that CSS style sheet from our HTML file. So to do that, we need to actually put in a link tag, and this goes inside of the title. So inside of the title, going to create a new tag called link. And this is an interesting tag because it doesn't really have an end link tag. It's just a single open tag. And inside of link, we want to put the href, which stands for hypertext reference, equals, and then this is where we're going to put the name of our file, style.css. And then after that, we can put rel equals style sheet, and that's just letting us know what type of document this is. Okay, so now with one line, we have linked our entire CSS style sheet document into this. So now we could have hundreds of different rules, and most of them do, if not thousands. We can have hundreds, if not thousands, of different rules that we create based on tags, based on IDs, based on classes, so we can control individual tags, groups of tags, all kinds of different things. And now we can control all of that just by linking our file into this. And now that this is linked, whatever we have is now going to match and actually work with our style sheet. Save, go back here, hit refresh, and poof, we have our styles back. And now our HTML file itself is much cleaner, and we can control things through our external CSS file. That's how most things go. So inside of my folder here now, I've now got three files: my index file, my style file, my baby monkey file, and my baby monkey image. Now, a lot of times these things will be put in different folders. So maybe I'll change that. Maybe I'll have a new folder called images. It's going to hold my JPEG. And maybe I'll make a new folder called CSS. It's going to hold all of my different styles. So I may have many different styles. Then I'm even going to create a new folder called JS for JavaScript that's going to hold our JavaScript file that we will make in a minute. Now, I moved these, baby monkey image and style CSS. I just moved them from what's called the root of the directory, which is the same level as the index file, into folders. Now, because I moved them, now all of a sudden my page is not going to be able to find them anymore. And basically I lost my styles and I have a broken image. And all we need to do is we just need to update the path to these files. So this is always relative to where the HTML document is saved. And since the HTML document is saved in the root, I can say that my style is actually in CSS/style.css, and my image is now in images/babymonkey.jpg. So I updated my paths to my actual assets. And now I go back and poof, they're back because now it can find them. So now another step is let's do the same thing to the JavaScript. Is even though we're just writing ourselves a little message right now, we can do something a little more in a moment. So now for the JavaScript, we want to do the same thing where instead of having this script and stuff, we're going to want to actually create a JavaScript file that's holding this. So I'm going to do the same thing where I'm just going to cut this line out. And then I don't need the script tags either. It's the same kind of thing where we're going to link to the JavaScript file in a slightly different way. And then it will just know that it's a JavaScript file. So now I'm going to open a new file again, paste my one line of JavaScript, save the file, save it in my JS folder, and I will name it scripts.js. Doesn't really matter. Okay. So in fact, I'm going to set it back to an alert and just say, hello world, so that we will know it works without having to open the console. All right, so we have our scripts.js now, which has an alert. We have nothing in our index file now, so if I were to test this, nothing happens, right? But we need to link to it inside of here, all right? And the way we do that is we can actually have, I guess it is a script tag still, like this. Only instead of, let's see, we can do an end script. Strange, the CSS link and the JavaScript link just work differently. So I still put it within two script tags, but instead of putting like all of my script actually in the document, which again can get super long and crazy and make your HTML document quite whack, we can say script and then src for source equals, and now we can actually go to our page, which is in js/scripts.js. And that will link our actual JavaScript file, which is now separate, into our HTML. So you can see how much cleaner our HTML is now that we have one line to pull in our CSS, one line to pull in our JavaScript, and we can put as much as we wanted into each of these files. Now let's make sure that we're getting our hello world alert. If I save this, make sure all three of them are saved. Refresh it, and there it is. It says hello world. We've got our styles. So now we have all three of these working together, where it's got the HTML with the actual content, and then we've got some style sheets that are styling how the content looks. And we've got some JavaScript that's going on there. And they're all three separate files, and we're starting to build ourselves a nice little web directory here where we've got our HTML index file in the root. And then we've got an images folder, a CSS folder, a JavaScript folder. And this is kind of like a basic boilerplate to start building. And we would just go on from here to make more and more on our page. Right now, we've just used header tags. I've showed you that there's different sizes of header tags. So if I do like an H2 and H2, do an H4 and H4, let's save that, go look at it. Hello world, a bunch of different sizes of headers. That's just part of it. Undo these. Oops. There we go. One thing you'll find really common inside of HTML is what's called a div tag. And it'll be really common to see a lot of elements kind of grouped within a div tag. But it's used as kind of a tag that that doesn't show up. Like visibly, nothing shows up in a div tag. You can use it to group things. So for example, if we wanted to just create a new class equals all, we'll call them all class. I can save that. So that's going to hold everything. And if I go back to my styles, and because it's a class and not an ID, I use dot. Let's say dot all, and then within dot all, we'll say the font size is friggin' massive. No, and poof, that makes all of our font sizes huge because we are indeed affecting everything at once. So I'm gonna go back, delete that. I just kind of wanted to show you these div tags is a thing. To actually create a text link, we use the A tag. So let's say, isn't the monkey great? Let's say just the word monkey, we want to be a link within that, all right? So what we can do is we can put the A tag, A, inside of it. And then do we end the A? I believe we do. And after it, we end the A. But then within the A tag here, we need to put the href. I think that's it. Yes, the href equals do. And then maybe we can go to like http://www.monkey.com. No idea what's going to be there. So I apologize if it's something terrible. So now within our line of text here, we've got isn't the monkey. Whoops. I want to add the end A to the end of the word monkey. So just monkey. So anything in between these A tags is going to be what's actually linked, and it should take us to that. So now I'm going to save it. Let's go back, refresh. There's our alert. And sure thing, I've got it's underlined automatically because that's what HTML does to let us know it's a link. And now I can click this, and now it clicks out to monkey.com. And apparently it is a kid using a giant Oculus Rift VR helmet, monkey media. That's monkey.com. All right, so I'm gonna hit back and set up a link. Let's make an actual button. All right, so that's how to link in text, which is technically a button. And then the last thing we're gonna do is let's make an actual button. So let's go underneath here, and there is indeed a tag called button. I'm gonna open my button tag, end my button tag, and inside of the button tag, or in between the two tags, this is gonna be like what we want to say. So we'll say, click me on the button. All right, so I'm gonna hit save. And now I've got a little button down here that says click me. I can click it and nothing happens, which is fine. The key is to make a button actually do anything, we need to use JavaScript. All right, so once again, I'll say it one more time. HTML is where we define and structure our content. That holds the actual text, holds the actual links to any media like images or videos or anything like that. CSS is what actually styles the look and feel and layout of everything that's on the stage. And then JavaScript basically makes things work, creates user interaction. Now you can do some basic user interaction with like a regular text link, but to do something, you know, funky, we write a function or anything, we need to actually do JavaScript. And one way to do that is inside of our button tag here, we can say button on click equals. So this is going to say whenever the user clicks this button, I want you to do a particular thing. All right, but what is it that we want to do? We want to do, we're going to call it my function. Some open close parentheses. Maybe I'll call it alert function. That's what we're going to tell it to do. All right, so this is all we need in this. I'm going to hit save. So what we've done is on our button itself, where it says click me, this is what the button says on it. And then still inside of the tag, we're telling it that on the click, when we actually click it, it's going to fire off this JavaScript function called alert function like this. So we named it with all lowercase and then a capital F right here. We have to remember that's how we named it. So I'm going to hit save. And now over here in the JavaScript, we're going to actually create our alert function. We'll type the word function and then the exact name of it, which I called it alert function, just like that. And then I can make an open close parenthesis, curly bracket. And this is how we create a function in JavaScript, which is a reusable piece of code. So we can call this code by name. Whenever we call this code by name, it will run whatever's inside of these brackets. So for now, I'm going to stick my alert in there. So instead of just happening right away, the alert, I'll let hello JavaScript function world. Okay, so now it won't do this until we actually click on that button. Okay, so I'm going to save this. I haven't changed anything to our style, just added something to our CSS here. But we've got this button that when we click it, it should do that function. So I'm going to save this, go back, refresh. Notice that the alert did not come up right away this time. And now I can click the little click me button, and poof, the alert happens now. Hello, JavaScript function world. So now we are using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript to do such a thing. One final thing, show you the power of JavaScript, is we can actually control like styles from CSS in JavaScript. And what I'll do is I can grab, for example, I can grab this amazing paragraph based on its ID in this way. So instead, or we'll do it after the alert. So the alert will come up and then we'll hit OK, and then it'll run the rest of this function. So what I can do is maybe I'll create a variable named X. And this X variable is going to be equal to my document dot get element by ID, like this. And then that ID is to go inside parentheses and quotes. And the ID that I'm actually looking for is amazing. Okay, so now I have a variable X that it basically represents my amazing ID. And then now I can change the style. I can say x.style. Let's say font size equals, let's make it massive, like 64 pics. I need to put it in quotes, 64 pics. And then we'll say x.style.color equals purple. All right, so now what should happen is when we click our button, it's going to run this JavaScript. The first thing it's going to do is alert, which halts everything until we hit OK. And then when we hit OK, it should, in theory, grab that amazing sentence and make it giant and purple, but not until we click the button. So that's kind of the difference is HTML and CSS all happen right away. Hit refresh, and that's all exactly the same. Now I hit click me. Now we're going to do some user interaction. And this has happened. Hello, JavaScript function world. I hit OK, and poof, it grabbed that sentence and made it huge and purple dynamically with JavaScript after the fact based on a user interaction instead of actually having to program it in ahead of time and have it show up right away. So that is it, my friends. We have some HTML, we have some CSS, we have some JavaScript. We are naming our HTML elements by class and ID, which we can then control through CSS, and we can even control through JavaScript by grabbing them. You know, it's way out of the scope of this class to go much further into HTML, CSS, or JavaScript as far as being vanilla and plain and from scratch like this. But it is extremely important for you just to get the concept of what these three languages are, how they work together, so that when we put things together in WordPress, you're going to understand a little bit more about what's going under the hood in certain situations where we want to tweak something under the hood. And it's also just very, very helpful as a designer to kind of understand some of the limitations once we get to them, and why they are when it comes to this underlying technologies. Let's talk about the easy way to do things. Let's talk about WordPress. That was the hard way to do things, or the manual way to do things. And things have evolved a bit on the web, where most people use an existing system unless you want to be a hardcore programming nerd, and not all of us want to be that. So let me show you how all that works. So WordPress started as a blog platform, and it's still out of the box is really powerful to create a blog. In fact, I'll recommend a lot of you have a blog as part of your site. We'll get to that as far as marketing is concerned, but it was set up just to be a blogging system, and it very quickly caught fire. And a lot of people started using it as a CMS, a content management system. And what that means is, when I was working in agencies building websites in like the early 2000s, we were building everything from scratch. I was using Dreamweaver, which helped a little bit, but ultimately we were just writing code, managing code in much the same way that I just showed you, between the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, to make simple, even simple brochure websites, which is just text and imagery, maybe some basic buttons to click around to see an about page, maybe a contact form. All of that is relatively quick and easy to do, easy enough with just custom coding. But then the problem becomes when the client wants to make a change, is so many people were tied to their web developers, and they had to go back to them every time they wanted to make a little change to their website. And certain bigger companies would want to change things all the time, and it became very cost prohibitive. So what they did is they started using systems like WordPress, which is a content management system. And what that means is you could build the site in WordPress, and then you could have a client log into the site and actually go to the page and edit the page and make changes themselves. So that's really where the power of a lot of this came from. Like 10 years ago, there were a few of these. WordPress, there's one called Joomla or Mambo. Drupal's another CMS that's still kind of powerful, that is a lot more of an enterprise solution. But all these things kind of came about, and more and more and more companies were using these systems, and web developers started using these systems to build websites, because it allows the user, the client, or the end customer, the user, to be able to log in and contribute to the site in a bunch of different ways without having to know any code. And this just naturally has evolved into, now there's a lot of ways to make really, really complicated sites and whatnot with WordPress as a developer without really having to learn any code, even though it is really helpful to understand the code underneath. So let's see, the world's most popular, widely used content management system powers 39.5% of all websites on the internet. That is crazy. I'm going to click this link and see where that actually takes me. It takes me to a WordPress market share thing. Okay, I'll go back to it. But anyway, what that basically means is all commercial websites. There's a lot that aren't necessarily built like this, like different government sites and things like that. But when we're talking about commercial sites, basically like over a third of every website now that you would go to for a commercial system is built using WordPress, which is insane. That's just so much. Let's see, 60% market share on CSSs, powers 15% of the world's top websites. I'm not sure the correlation between these two stats, but I know it's just an insane amount. Over 500 sites are built each day using WordPress. Only 60 to 80 are built with other platforms. 55,000 plus different plugins. I'll teach you about plugins and how that works. WooCommerce is what we use for e-commerce inside of WordPress. Powers 22%, or about a fifth of the top million e-commerce sites in the world. So that's one of the major powers of this using WordPress, is that there's so many people that use it, that there's just a ton of resources out there. There's, you can ask any question about any part of it. There's thousands and thousands of plugins to increase its functionality, everything from forms to e-commerce to image galleries, everything you can imagine. And so there's a huge, huge, huge user base. Now, the downside to this huge user base is that WordPress sites, they are more easily hacked. And that's because if millions of people are all using the exact same website structure, if a bad actor finds a security leak and a way to, for example, what they like to do, it's not like they hack your site and like steal stuff necessarily. What they'll do is they'll use your hosting without you knowing it's been hacked to like drain all your resources for their whatever email spam program or whatever. I've actually had hosting services kick client websites off of hosting because they got hacked and it just started screwing up the server and slowing things down. So traditionally WordPress sites, you have to deal with security because they're all built in the exact same way. But as soon as a hacker finds a vulnerability, there's all of a sudden millions of websites out there that all have that same vulnerability. So it's important to keep up on our security and keep up on our updates. And I'll go through that as we set it up. Let's see. Another thing is WordPress.com versus WordPress.org. This is kind of a funky thing that WordPress itself, if I go to WordPress.org, WordPress itself is free, meaning you can go to WordPress.org and you can literally download the files and you can install them on your hosting server and start using it. Most modern hosting companies, you don't even need to download it. It's part of the hosting package for you to like click a couple buttons and install it. That's something that we're gonna do today together on at least one hosting platform. Now, WordPress also has a commercial side to it. So the .org is the free part. If we go to WordPress.com, there's actually a commercial side to WordPress that this is basically a hosting company that you can technically set up a WordPress.com account. Like I could do WordPress.com/Chris Brown. Maybe that's already taken, but you know what I mean. You know, one is the free open source kind of just download the files and do what you want with them. That's the .org. The .com is more of here, you can pay us money if you want, and we can help you use this type thing. We're not going to need to use either of them because we're doing separate hosting, which is the best way to do it. Let's see, as we go through here, 16 million times that. Here's different WordPress versions. So I'm talking about keeping up on our versions. We'll deal with that. And I don't think we care about the rest of these statistics, plugins, things like that. All right, so anyway, that's WordPress in a nutshell. It is a content management system. It allows us to log into an admin area of a website and click around and do things, edit text and create pages and stuff like that. So let's get started. What we want to do is log into our hosting control panel. So all of you should have hosting set up by now. So we can all follow along here. If you got something besides Ionos, you can follow along as best you can. It's going to be a similar situation. I've used GoDaddy, I've used Bluehost. Ultimately, they should be generally self-explanatory that once you pay for a hosting account, you should get, you know, within 24 hours or so, a setup email that gives you your sign-in information. So if you did the WordPress hosting, great. It should start us off here. If you did any, you know, the traditional one, you'll probably have to go into what's called a control panel. And then inside of that control panel, you may see, you know, where you would install WordPress. There'll be like a WordPress one-click install button or something that should take you to this. So cool. All right. So first and foremost, go ahead and give your website a title. You can change it later, so it's not a huge deal, whatever you want it to be. You have one particular login for your Ionos actual hosting account. You are welcome to use the exact same login as you want, but just so you understand, typically it's different for a WordPress account because typically you don't use your actual email. I would do it just something that's easy enough for you to remember, easy enough for you to log in. Yeah, this totally works. We want it English, we accept, sure, go ahead and continue. Great. Options, managed or regular. Now we are going to manage it ourselves, even though this says recommended. Let me read through and see what this is trying to do for us. You focus on content design. Our team handles updates, protection, and optimization of the platform. Sounds cool, but I want you to understand what updating and protecting and optimizing means. So we're going to handle these things ourselves. So the managed WordPress will automatically add some plugins and do some security things for you that I want to step through manually with you. And we might do a slightly different way anyway. So go ahead and choose just the regular continue with WordPress without the managed. This is the standard installation. So what's different here is if we were to choose the managed, they'll have their own like special Ionos installation screens from here, whereas this regular one is kind of the basic WordPress one. So yeah, you chose the domain name you want to attach to. Great. Sign the domain. We're now setting up your website. It usually takes maybe a minute or two. It's usually not that long. So we'll just kind of hang out and watch this awesome little square happen. And while it's installing, what it's doing, so you understand, is there's two different sides to a WordPress website. One is the actual files on the server. And just like we just wrote HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files, it is a giant folder, just hierarchical concoction of hundreds, if not thousands of files that make up WordPress. And it's all made up of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files on the front end. What the front end means is that's what the browser reads, okay? We don't need any kind of special server, anything. Like you could have HTML, CSS, and JavaScript files sitting on your desktop of your computer, and if you open them in a browser, they're gonna work and they're gonna do what you think they want. All right, so this is set up, but let me finish my spiel for a minute here, kind of about what's happening. The other side to a WordPress website, and this is another big reason why we need hosting, is that it actually connects to a database. All of the content, everything is stored in a database, and it uses PHP, which is a server-side language, to actually connect to the database from the CSS, HTML, JavaScript. So technically, WordPress is using at least 4 different programming languages all put together: HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and then PHP. It'll use a MySQL database, which technically uses a query language. So there's like 5 different languages we'd have to learn, but we don't have to do any of it. It just automatically sets up for us. But it is kind of important to understand that there is a database involved, which is part of what you're paying for with your hosting. And then the web files kind of communicate with that database. The difference is if you were to download all of your web files for your WordPress site and try and open them locally on your computer, they won't work. They need a server-side component with a database and all this stuff that runs on a server in order for WordPress to work. That's because it's dynamic and it builds all of the code, all of the pages based on like rules and things rather than everything being in static code. So now that it's set up, you can see, all right, it's telling us our domain. The little red lock is because it's not secured with an SSL certificate yet. We will go through that. It's installed. Great, great. Let me scroll down, see what else is here. Your overall score, right, that's actually pretty good for just being out of the box. That score represents like speed optimization type stuff. It's never going to be 100. We'll talk about that as we go. Your hosting includes some statistics. It includes the ability for you to set up an email if you want. You could post things to the search engine. It's just some helper stuff. We'll go through this in due time. But for right now, your website should be there. It's digitalartvortex.com. Here we are. This is, for now, just another WordPress website. You scroll down, and there's a search bar. And notice where it says recent posts and recent comments. That's because out of the box, proudly powered by WordPress, out of the box, it's technically a blog. We have to actually do some setup to make it act like a static website with static pages. This is a blog. I'll show you in a moment. We log into the admin, into the back end, and we can actually create new blog posts and just create a whole little blog setup. Now, the front of your site, once you set it up, it should live at your domain name. Now, we want to get into the back end or the admin area of the site. So realize there's 2 different spots we're talking about. One is the back end or admin area of your hosting account. That's what Ionos is, or GoDaddy. That's what this is. This is where we set up WordPress. This is where we can set up our email, look at statistics. But when we actually want to work on our site itself, once it's installed, we never really do anything else on this hosting panel. It's on the actual login of the website itself. Now, there's several ways to get to that. One, I'm pretty sure if you click Edit Website, probably going to open to, okay, it's open to your login there. But I want to show you a different way to do it. So from your front end site, at any point, you can always just, after the domain name, type in /login. And there you go. So either one of those, you can either click directly from Ionos inside of your hosting, but typically you're not going to want to log into your hosting account just to open that up and then click this link. You can typically just go into your site and poof, you're now in here. Now, this is interesting. This is some kind of special Ionos helper to help you through. Instead of saying, let's go, let's say, no thanks, I'm an expert, because I'm an expert and you will be experts by the time we're done with this class. Perfect. So now we are looking at the back end of WordPress. Just like that, notice we didn't write any code. We now have a live website. So typically what I do when I'm working on a WordPress website, if I'm working on it online, there is a way to set up like a local server so everything happens really fast at home, but probably won't do that in this class. But I usually have two tabs open. I have one tab that is showing me the front end of the website and one that's showing me the back end. If you roll over where it actually says Digital Art Vortex in the upper left of the WordPress thing, yeah, see there's a visit site link. You can open that in a new tab, perfect. And then when you're logged in, even if you're looking at the front end of the site, you'll see that bar across the top. And that's just showing you that you're logged in, and that would let you get back to the admin if you want it. But I have found through, now I've literally personally myself probably built somewhere between 50 and 100 WordPress sites. I've built at least 30 of them, like paid for clients. I've built a lot of different types of them, e-commerce ones, more media rich, more data rich, all kinds of stuff. And I've found through a lot of experience that it is much faster to have two tabs open and just go between the two and make your changes in the admin and then click over to the other tab and hit refresh and see those changes than it is for you to stay in the same tab and make changes and go back and forth between the admin area and the front end. It just takes a few seconds to switch between the two. It's just much faster to have them both open. So let's go back to the back end. And what I want to do is, without going into too much detail, I'm going to click down these links on the left. I'm going to show you in general what comes out of the box in WordPress. Okay, so on this first dashboard page, this special Ionos by 1111, great. This is something that they give you. I don't even know what it is. But that's not really part of WordPress. The rest of this stuff down here, it's showing us the health status of our site. There's no information yet. You can kind of control what boxes of info you'll see on this page. Like there's an events and news thing that's showing you WordPress stuff. Once you actually have your site built, like maybe you have an e-commerce site and you can have a box that will show you all of your orders for the day or for the week or things like that. This dashboard is a way for you to kind of see little widgets of information about what's going on your site. So out of the box, it shows us we've got one post, one page, and one comment. I'll show you how those things, what those mean in a second stuff. Now, notice there's an updates already for the dashboard. Now, I talked briefly about the updates, how it's important because of security, and that it's just easy to find a vulnerability in one website and then have a bad actor apply that hack to like 5 million websites. So there's a bit of a game of having to always keep WordPress up to date, keep your plugins up to date. There's a little bit of an art form to it, but for right now, you can see that you have one plugin that's out of date and you've got two themes that are out of date. We're not going to update them now. I'll come back and show you more of that and why and how when we get into it, but I just kind of wanted to point that out for the time being. So a post, this is a blog post, all right? There are, notice that on the left there, the main links. We started with dashboard, now we're within posts. Within these main links, there's a little kind of drop-down menu of more related links within that. So you've got all posts, add new, categories, tags. There's a hello world post that comes with it. Oh, it's telling us welcome to the block editor when you clicked on it. What WordPress does, this is giving us this whole new thing. About a year ago, they changed it to where when you're editing a file, it used to just be like a little box that looked more like a Word document where you could change very basic settings. You could write some HTML in there. Now they have a little more complicated way where you can create these different blocks of content, which is kind of cool. You can hit next. Let's see what it wants to show us. Make each block your own. Great, hit next. Get to know the block library. There's different types of HTML blocks. Great. Get started, sure. All right. So without worrying too much about the details of this, this is where we could edit our first blog post. So go ahead and change something in there. You should be able to click in there and change what it says. Hey, there we go. And these are different blocks. So remember I showed you the difference between an H1 tag and a paragraph tag? That's literally what we're looking at right now. The hey is using like a header tag of some kind. Yeah, see right there, there's within that block, there's different styles you can play with and change stuff, whatever. But go ahead and hit update at the top. And then click over to your other tab and hit refresh, and poof, you have updated your website. All right, so that's kind of the content management part of it. Let's go back a level. Get out of this. All right, so if you want to go ahead and add a new post. And just add whatever title you want. And by default, it's set up where it's got, just the theme right now has a big title and then a smaller text. So type whatever, hit publish. That puts it live. Now you can refresh. And now you've got both your posts on your homepage. And because it's a blog system by default, before we tell it to work differently, it puts all of the posts on the actual homepage. And as you clicked the link, it took you into where you could edit it. So go back to the main WordPress dashboard. So right now, every blog post is set as uncategorized. I'm sure you're all familiar with blogs for the most part. So imagine instead of 2 blog posts, if you had 200 of them, you would have them in different categories. You may have tags associated with them. It just gives the user a way to be able to filter and find a blog post they're looking for. So you can kind of organize your content based on that. All right, so let's move on to the next. Click on media. So this is where you control all of your images and things that you will find in here. You can also do videos and stuff, but typically, or documents. We'll start with images. Typically, if we do a video, we'll want to do YouTube or Vimeo or something like that. So if you have an image hiding anywhere on your machine, all those look fun. There we go. And poof. Okay, so you've got this image. And that will show you all the details about it. It even gives you a URL to directly where it now lives. So you can kind of peek at that URL and see where it put it there at the bottom where it says file URL. So it put it in, yeah, there you go. You can just paste it in and see it. So yeah, put it in your domain name /WP content /uploads. Then it actually creates folders based on the date, and then it stuck it there, right? So that's all you have to do. And now if you were to go back to one of your blog posts, for example, you could go in and if you were to edit it, click the name or click edit, either way. And then if you look at the blocks, you can add a block, you can click that plus content area. And here's the different types of blocks. And all these blocks are HTML tags. So I taught you what a paragraph tag is. This is literally just using an image tag, and yeah, you're clicking through it and hit update. The general idea is you can add images that way. So go ahead and go back to the main WordPress area. So the media library is just like that. You can drag and drop images there. And as you can see, if you go try and add an image block to your post, it'll actually give you the opportunity to drag an image right there, which will just add it to media library. So you can kind of go in either way. You can add it to the library first and then use items from them, or you can kind of add items to the library as you use them. So then next time we have pages. And pages works a lot like posts, except for they're not blog posts, they're pages. So click inside of sample page there. And it all works the same way. Like you literally even have the same like setup right now, only there's just more text in here. And the only difference between a post and a page is how they are used. So go ahead and go back, and then so you can see it comes with a sample page with some text, and you can click on the privacy policy. It also comes with a default privacy policy page that has a bunch of stuff on there. Right? Now, right now, you can't see these pages, right? They're there, but you don't see them on the front end of your site. All you see is your blog. And that's because it's set up to be a blog. We'll change that and show those pages momentarily. Just wanted to point that out. Comments, you can click on comments, and that's pretty self-explanatory. You can comment on blog posts. You can turn comments on or off. If you look at the front end of the site again, on that front end tab, you should actually see, yeah, there's a comment that's in there, and you can link you out of your site apparently, but oh, there we go. There's the comment that you can find it. So again, it's a blog system out of the box, but I'll teach you how to turn it into a badass web development system. Click on Assistant. That's new that's in WordPress. Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought this was an Ionos thing. Don't worry about this. Get out of here. This is helping us pick our theme. We're going to do that in a different way. Appearance. Click on Appearance. And all of this, we will go through themes in much more detail. What a theme is a theme is basically the underlying CSS and HTML structure of your website and how it looks. You can see that this comes with 3 themes: WordPress 2019, 2020, and 2021. I had not seen the 2021 yet. It's very basic. Pick one of the other 2 and choose Activate. And now go refresh your page. And did that change it? It did, didn't it? And then pick another one. That didn't change it a whole lot. You can go in on any theme and customize it. We'll go through that in a lot more detail. We will end up with one theme. I'm going to show you, we will not use any of these themes. I'm going to show you a treasure trove of different themes, different types of themes, different theme builders. That's going to be where a lot of your decision is going to be, and about kind of how your website is going to be laid out, what your options are. So inside of that, themes is a very major part that we'll go through. The rest of the stuff under here, you can customize any theme, widgets, menus, theme editor. We'll go through that later. So click on plugins now. Plugins, this is where you get add-on functionality that WordPress doesn't come with. Out of the box, WordPress comes with a very, very basic functionality. It's just a blog that you can make pages on and make a menu. It doesn't include anything, for example, to do e-commerce. We've got to get a series of plugins to add e-commerce functionality. What it comes with, typically it only comes with this one Akismet anti-spam plugin, which isn't even activated. We're not going to mess with this right now. It does have one, that Ionos Assistant. Go ahead and click deactivate on Ionos Assistant. And you'll notice that it disappeared over in our menu on the left. And we're going to leave that unactivated for now because that technically doesn't come with WordPress. Like, this is going to look the same for the most part on any hosting company you use, only they might have their own special little things. Like GoDaddy adds a bunch of crap in here. So I want you to see kind of the basic WordPress as it is before we start adding things back in. So plugins are all just add-on functionality. There are thousands and thousands of plugins. Click on users. And right now you'll see the one user that you set up. But WordPress is absolutely meant to be a multi-user tool. So you could have a whole company with like 100 people and have all 100 people connect into the website and have them all contributing articles to the same time. And you can have different levels of, like, you are the administrator. This person's only allowed to publish content. This person's only allowed to add drafts. So there's lots of roles and lots of different users. Even with small clients, I'll always have 2 users. Well, I have one that's set up as my login, that's an administrator, so I can always get into the client's account. And then they'll always have a user that I set up for them that they might not have administrative privileges. Some do, some don't, depending on their comfort level and how much they want to know about this. It's interesting. I've built sites for so many clients. Some clients are all about wanting to do everything themselves. I end up basically just teaching them how to use WordPress, and then they screw with it and make their site look crappy after a while and just play with things and inject all kinds of stuff. Or there's people who just, even this is too technical for them and they don't even want to mess with any of this stuff, and I just do it all for them, even though it's not code. You're still having to learn a piece of software, which, you know, is a skill in of itself. So in tools, there's some basic tools in there. Let's see, site health, personal data, not worried about that stuff. Like, for example, when we add a backup plugin, we'll all of a sudden see backups in this tools thing. There's certain of these things will kind of add functionality as we go. And now let's go through the settings. Actually, before we get into these settings, click collapse menu below it, just so you can see the bottom and how you can make that come and go to be a little icon thing. Bring it back up, click the bottommost button, and I like to leave it open. So now we're going to go through these general settings, and this is where you can change the name of your site. So you can change the name, go ahead and change the tagline, because in this particular theme, it's actually showing you the tagline. You can change these things at any time. There's the URL that it knows. Later on, when we add in a HTTPS SSL certificate to keep things encrypted and all that, we'll change that. But for now, all this stuff is pretty self-explanatory. Formats, we can leave all this by default. Now go down to writing instead of general. So writing, okay, we can leave all this by default as well. Different post formats, okay, click on reading. Here's where a big one that we can change. Go ahead and click the radio button, make it a static page, yep. And then where it says post page, leave that at select and change home page to be sample page. All right, so what that did is instead of telling your home page to represent all of your blog posts and to list them there, you're telling your home page just to be a static web page instead. And we already have one there called sample page. So now once we save this, go ahead and save it, go over to your other tab, you can open it that way too, yep. And now this is your home page instead of your blog. So go back. And now one other thing we want to check on this one, and this one's really important, is that bottom check mark, discourage search engines from indexing this site. All right, we want, and then hit save. We want all of you to do that because you do not want the search engines to index this website until you're done working on it, right? So, I mean, no one's going to go randomly find your domain name unless you tell them to go find it. But search engines will list your site, and it's just until you're ready for it, you want them to ignore it. But when they're ready, this will be part of what we do at the end of class. I'll teach you about search engine optimization, and we'll uncheck this. I'll teach you all the different ways to get yourself out there. So most of this stuff is kind of self-explanatory, or it's things that are default and you don't need to touch. But this is a big one, is telling your main site to be a home page instead of a blog, right? So that's a big one inside of reading. And then just the rest of them, discussion, media, permalinks, pretty sure all this stuff we can just leave default. There's a lot of info about like how you would want the images to work, how you would want the comments to work, all that different stuff, how you want your actual domain to work, and there's the defaults are just fine for all of this. So that's it. That is what comes out of the box in WordPress. We could dig a little deeper into the themes, we could build some more, but ultimately it's just a system where you can create posts, you can create pages, you can add media, we can go in and we can set up a menu so that when we add pages, they automatically get added to our menu. But what's really going to change things is when we start to play with themes. But if I just search for sitemap, it's going to show me what a basic website map is, right? This is what a sitemap is. It's a way to visually show kind of the layout of the website. Okay, so it starts on the home page, and then this one has a products page, a cart page, an account page, and then other pages, and then underneath the products, we've got categories and all this stuff. So what it is it's a way, without worrying about in any way, shape, or form what the site looks like or how it's laid out on screen. It's showing me what is all of the content in the site and what its relationship is. So I can click on another one here. Basic homepage, page title, page title. See if we can find a more complicated one. Here's one that looks like it was done after the site was built, and you can see all the different levels of pages. Usually it's in this kind of top-down tree form to show you what's where when we're talking about a sitemap. I've seen it done kind of from the center out like this. Here's kind of a Google Apps sitemap showing you how those work. I've also seen it done kind of from the left moving to the right, but typically it's kind of a top-down situation like this. And then this one is a good example, like you can also go kind of show the content that it's going to be, even if they're not separate pages. So this starts with my page, and then it's got 4 links. So it's got a home page, it's got about, contact, portfolio, my links, but then just kind of shown in a different way. I can see image and profile, form, email, and postal. So these aren't separate pages. This is showing me the content on that page, which is really powerful and really helpful. Usually when I'm quoting a website, I have to create a sitemap before I can even collect money, because I have to work with the client to figure out, okay, exactly how big is this site and how much stuff is on each page, and how can I quote this? How much is this going to cost to build? When I worked in big agencies, there was account executives who would work on sitemaps for weeks with clients, and they would be like hundreds of boxes big, until we finally decided, like, okay, this is what we're building, everyone agrees on it, and now we move on. So the sitemap is one half of it.